Hello, everyone. Welcome to our May Big Think. My name is Mel from What School Could Be. And just over a month ago, I was privileged enough to be in San Diego attending the Deeper Learning 2025 conference. And something that I experienced and is still resonating is that when we design for deeper learning, we're also designing for belonging and we're designing for the kind of leadership that really grows stronger through connection and not isolation. So today, we have two leaders that I got to meet in person there at the conference, and I'm so happy to have them virtually here with me today. So I'm going to introduce them very quickly. First, we have Carly. Hi, Carly. Carly Otto. She is a fourth grade teacher in Spring Lake Park, Minnesota. She's previously spent time in rural Illinois as a classroom teacher and elementary instructional coach. Carly finds joy and passion in designing student-centered learning experiences that activate students towards equity. And Carly is actually in her second year of the 20-month pathway of the High Tech High Graduate School of Education, MED in Educational Leadership. Thanks for being here, Carly. And we also have Francesca Henderson. So Frances is the program leader of the MED Educational Leadership Program. With a background as a high school mathematics teacher, dean of students, and instructor for the EDL program in school law, Frances brings a wealth of experience to her role. Frances's extensive experience and unwavering dedication to deeper learning and equity have positioned her as a leader with a people-first mentality, firmly grounded in the belief that everyone should strive to reach their fullest potential. Hey, Frances.
Hi, everyone.
Good to see you again. Okay, so let's just jump into it with probably one of the many things that both of you have in common, which is High Tech High's Graduate School of Education. And we'll drop the link in the chat for those of you who are interested in finding out more about their graduate program. Frances, maybe I'll start with you. So could you tell us what makes the High Tech High GSE model of leadership preparation so unique, and maybe how it reflects deeper learning, not just for the youth learners, but also for the adults that are in the programs?
Oh, yes. Great question. That's a great starter. Thank you again for having me here. So I will say that there are like two major buckets for me with the High Tech High Graduate School of Education, and in particular, our master's program. One is you get the benefit of bridging theory and practice. I think there are a lot of different types of programs. Our program is online or in person. And so, with either experience, you're going to be learning theories in your class, and then you apply it to the context of what you're working in. And I think that that's very special because my mom used to say, you could talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? And I feel like that is exactly what we do at High Tech High. We're about walking the walk. All of our instructors are either in schools, our current school leaders, or our leaders in education, like coaching individuals in sort of different capacities. So these are all practicing educators, which I think is phenomenal for our program. And the second thing, which is I think a little more special to me, is that we have students from all over the world. We have students from Colombia. This year, we're getting a student from Vietnam. We have students in Hawaii, Japan. And so there's just something great about being a part of a global community that makes the experience more special. So I'm from California, but I live in Maryland. School systems are very different in California than Maryland. But imagine a school system in Colombia and how you can learn about that from your peers in our program. And, you can make some friends. You want to travel to Colombia, you got a friend. We had some of our students, host one another. So I just think it's a really special place to learn and grow as a leader. And your second question was about deeper learning, correct, Mel?
Yeah. So deeper learning, how is that reflected in the program? Not just for your youth learners, but also for those adults that are in your program as well.
Thanks. I'm not going to give too much away because I'm assuming Carly is in it. So she is like in the mix. So to me, I'm always like, pass it to the students, pass it to the students. But I do want to say this. I will say that deeper learning is sort of embedded in the way that we view education. So in how we prep our leaders to go into schools and work with their teachers, prepping their teachers to work with their students, we care a lot about communication. We care a lot about collaboration. We sort of do that even in an online setting. Like Carly can tell you, they're spending 99% of their times in small groups, breakout rooms, discussions, talking, online, because effective communication, which is one of the 6 tenets of deeper learning, is very big to us. We care a lot about personalizing the education. Like I said, the theory and the practice. We might learn about something, but you're going to apply it in your context so it's relevant to you. And your instructors and myself, we like to work with the students to make sure that what you're learning is relevant and doesn't seem like you are checking a box, because we don't believe in that. We're not checking boxes here. We're trying to transform education.
Awesome. Thanks, Francis. So Carly, obviously you're part of that same learning community, and I'm wondering, how has your experiences there really changed your thinking about your work in schools, or even your role as a leader there?
Yeah, a lot like Fran mentioned, there's a lot of like theory to action in this program. And I feel like what I'm doing in the program is applicable to what I'm doing in my school site as well. Like there is no box checking. Everything is practical, everything is relevant. And if it's not, then there's the flexibility to make it so. Like Fran said, there's a lot of working with the students, working with the instructors to make sure that what we're doing is relevant. And Fran had said the word like transformative, and that's a word I use a lot when I talk about this program. And I feel like this program has transformed me as like a human and an educator. There's so much honoring around who we are as humans, what our experiences have been, and how those influence how we show up in educational spaces. So this program has genuinely, truly like transformed me both in and out of schools.
I love that. Was there a specific turning point for you in the program, maybe, where you started to see things just a little bit differently? Because that's an experience that I think unfortunately, not everyone has when they're pursuing higher degrees. And so I'm curious to see, like, when does that kind of fall into place?
It was from the get-go. We started with an immersion week in San Diego, where we went camping. That's how we met everyone. It's grounded in community, and these are going to be our people for the next 10 months, 20 months, and they truly were my people after those 2 nights of camping. So like they talk about, this is a community-based program, and like Fran said, they're not just talking the talk, they're walking it too.
Amazing. So this question is for both of you, and I might toss it back to Francis first. But if you could bring one aspect of the high-tech high GSE approach into any professional learning space, whether it's like a mindset or a structure or a framework, a way of building community even, what would that one thing be? And why do you think it matters so much when we're trying to foster deeper learning?
Another great question. So, I mean, I want to say theory to practice, but because I already talked about that, I'll talk about my secondary.
Okay.
I would say a part of any good educational system is still having structures and systems in place to support what you believe in. So one thing we really believe in is we believe strong relationships, connecting with one another, and being intentionally human-centered is at the core of what we believe. So you'll see every single class, we start with a connector. So we take, it doesn't matter if we get through the content for that day, we are spending 15 to 20 minutes every single class being intentional about connecting with one another. And at the end of every class, we're eliciting feedback from the students that the instructors use to improve the very next class. So I would say, I think that prioritizing relationships is a great way to, something that we do that I feel like would be great in any professional learning space.
Thank you. Carly, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking The way the program has embedded culturally proficient, culturally sustaining pedagogy, and it's truly not even a pedagogy, it's a mindset, it's a way of being for this program. That's what I would like to bring into other educational systems, is that it's not something we check on a box and say we've covered this. It's not a training we did once. It's truly how we are in our spaces.
I think that's actually the perfect segue to go into maybe the next question over here, because I want to shift into this idea of how deeper learning itself is felt and experienced and shaped in real time. Because it sounds like from what you folks are saying that those kinds of experiences really grow out of the relationships where you're building trust and support and collaboration. So I'm wanting to hear from both of you how deeper learning has taken shape through the different communities that you're a part of. So maybe Carly, from either your classroom experience or your DL conferences experience, um, when was the moment that deeper learning clicked? Like, was there a relationship in particular or a sense of community that helped make that moment happen so that you could apply it from your the schooling that you're doing into your own classroom with your learners?
Yeah, the first thing I thought of was the word authenticity. And deeper learning is so rooted in identities and belonging and who we are and how we show up. And um, the past 20 months as I've been in this program, there's definitely been a journey of authenticity I've been on, and how I show up in my classroom and who I am in my classroom and how that intersects with who I am out of my classroom. Um, so I'm thinking about the word authenticity as you ask that question,
Mhm.
and being able to find that authenticity in myself so that I'm showing up more wholly for my students and my teammates.
In contrast, how is that different from maybe what you did previously in a more traditional environment?
Yeah, I used to always, early in my career, I would say, like, I don't share a lot about myself. I'm just a private person. I used to think of myself as here I am at work, here I am outside of work. And through deeper learning and through this program, I've learned that you can't have that separation. Like, you are a whole, no matter where you are, and how you show up matters.
I love that because that's applicable directly to the learners in your classroom too, right? You want them to show up in that same way. So that's so important. Thanks, Carly. Francis, maybe in your leadership work, how do you know when a school community is not just in the talking stages about deeper learning? I mean, I'm sure there's a range, right? But how do you know when it's starting to take root? Like, what does that look like and feel like?
Yeah, another great question. Anytime I do a professional learning experience or visit a school, my first step is I want to see actual student work. If I can see evidence of deeper learning in the student work, then I know, whether the leaders are doing it, whether it's trickling to the teachers. What matters is we want to see what's working for students. And so I will look at, even if it's a piece of reflective writing or if it's a project that a student has made, I'm looking for academic content mastery. I'm looking for evidence that they were thinking critically about or problem solving in some way, and evidence of working collaboratively, sort of these competencies of deeper learning. And to me, it starts with, like, I was a math person, so I like data, but that is a qualitative piece of data where that's where I always start. um, you know the results are the results. If you can see evidence of deeper learning, you have to be able to see it with what the students are doing.
Is there one learner that kind of stands out in your mind, one specific
Mm,
instance that you saw huge growth maybe throughout the year or whatever time period that you had with them?
yeah, so I'm actually thinking about two people, so I want to try to keep it brief. Because one, I'm thinking about a student, like a young person, a K through 12 student, and then another, I'm thinking about one of my students who we call candidates because they're master students. And And I don't know if you've seen, well, yeah, some people may or may not have seen the Most Likely to Succeed documentary, but I often think about Sam, who he just was really working on this project. He was working so hard. He wasn't sort of done making it. He stayed, worked into the summer until he finished it, and like finally finished this project. And a part of that sort of determination, I think, comes from caring so deeply about what they were learning and what they were doing, and understanding that his role in making this larger project actually function, his role was important. So there's like this individual accountability, but also there's this literal working collaboratively, because if my piece doesn't go in, this entire wheel will not function. So that really stands out to me as evidence of what deeper learning can do, because that pushes really beyond just, oh, I'm in this class from 2 to 2:50, and then I'm gone, and then I'm gonna do some homework and then come back. Like a student who was doing a project stayed into the summer, weeks into the summer. This is not like a day or two, weeks into the summer to finish his project. I think speaks to the impact that deeper learning has.
Yeah. And shout out to those teachers too, right? Who stayed with Brian.
That was my second thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you share that piece, Frances.
No, please. No, that was my second one. It's just, if you create a space where teachers are able to work collaboratively, because I think both of his teachers stayed with him in the summer too. I think they like rotated a little bit, but both of them stayed into their summer too. So when you have that space where teachers are working collaboratively, students are working collaboratively, you just really see this beautiful amalgamation of deeper learning on so many different levels. So it was, yeah, Brian, he did that though.
Yes.
He did that.
That's amazing. And he's doing so well now. I think we'll have an opportunity to speak with him in a couple of months again. So yeah, excited to do that. So again, this conversation is just steering itself, but the accountability model that we're really pushing hard against, right? It sort of defines evidence of learning right now as scores or grades and that kind of thing. But I think deeper learning really invites us to ask more meaningful questions, really. Like, can the learners apply what they know, right? Can they think critically, collaborate with others? All of those things that you brought up, Frances, about, what was happening with Brian and that journey that he was on. And Carly, when we were emailing back and forth to get ready for the Big Think, you mentioned that you'd been working on both student engagement and feedback this year, and that was sort of your focus area. So I'm wondering if you can describe that work a little bit for us, and then maybe what kinds of feedback or observations that showed you that deeper learning was really growing in your classroom and happening for your learners.
Yeah. So my capstone project has been around increasing engagement in my students this year. And one of my change ideas was to have students give feedback on my weekly lessons, both around pedagogy and content. And I went through several iterations of how to collect feedback. I was finding the feedback wasn't super helpful. And I was doing some one-on-one conversations during this time as well. And I came to understand that this was a new mindset for students too. Students had never really been asked for their opinion or their feedback. So through some different iterations, I got to a point where I found a system that worked, where they were able to give helpful feedback to us around what they liked, what they didn't like, what was hard, what they would persist through a challenge for. And I used those results to design the following lessons. And I have a quote from a student that I interviewed last month where he said in November, he only comes to school because he has to. And in April, he said, I really like coming to school. You guys listen to me. You take my ideas. Like, I feel like I can just be who I am now. And that quote, I think, will just stick with me forever.
Yeah. Did you remind us, Carly, how old are your students?
4th grade, so 9 or 10.
4th grade. What do you think it was that was holding them back from giving you true and honest feedback? Because they're pretty young, right? And I would assume that they want to please the teachers still. And like, what was that? Did they ever share it with you?
Some got close. There's the idea of people pleasing. And some said, I don't know. I just figure you know how to do school. You're the teacher. Don't you know how to do this? And so there is shifting not only adult mindsets in this work, but also student mindsets. But they're all at different paces, different learners. But I think we're coming to the place where there's an understanding that learning is different for everyone. Learning doesn't have to look like we see in TV or movies. It can look messy. It can look loud. It can look like how you want it to look like. And the engagement work I've been doing this year has just, for me, I've seen it just, I say, further our equity work we're doing. Yeah. When we listen to students' voices and their experiences and help them learn how to use those to activate towards equity for themselves, like engagement work for me has become equity work.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that, Carly? What was the transition there for you?
I think it all started with truly understanding engagement, or at least coming to a common understanding of that term between myself, my students, my school, my district. And engagement work has been a district initiative. And so once we finally came to an understanding of what engagement means, we could see that it truly is about the student voice and the student experience. And when we center those and we decenter the adults, this learning is the students. And this is learning that the students can continue to use and apply. And it's not just a checkbox for 4th grade.
Yeah.
My hope is what they're learning this year in 4th grade, they can continue to build on, or they can continue to recall it as they move forward in their education.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. Francis, I'm going to switch to you really quickly. 2-part question for you. So hearing Carly's experience is pretty incredible there. I'm wondering, how does HTH GSE help school leaders rethink what counts as evidence? Because it sounded like, Carly said it's moving totally up the chain, right? To the school and district and so on. So how are we trying to reframe what counts as evidence in terms of the school leaders? And then secondly, how does that approach align from what we're learning about research, like the Learning Policy Institute's work that you had provided earlier?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that one thing we talk about in our master's program and also in our graduate school more broadly is about different types of evidence. And we also talk about triangulation of data, which sounds like very researchy, but it's really about like, how can we get multiple points of evidence that help us come to a centralized conclusion? So we really place a lot of value on qualitative data collection. Like I said, looking at student work, talking to people, empathy interviews as data for evidence, interviews with different stakeholders. We look at quantitative data as well. So we might do some survey design, or we might look, only a few students have done this year, but sometimes we'll look at larger statewide or national data sets to help them sort of ground their problem of practice, or look at district data to help them ground their problem of practice, whatever we can sort of get access to. And I think it's really important to understand that if a problem is existing, or that you're trying to sort of describe a problem or uncover a problem, looking at different types of data to help you uncover what's happening is really essential to our work. Carly is currently doing our capstone, which we use improvement science to sort of guide their master's project. And it starts literally with doing empathy interviews. Like, before, we don't come in saying, oh, I'm a part of this community, I know exactly what all the problems are. No, we say, I'm interested in equitable outcomes for students who are from marginalized backgrounds on the DF list. I don't know. So I'm going to talk to some of those students, and I'm going to see what their experiences are like and what's going on for them. So we try to really ground what we're doing in data as a way to, make sure that we understand what's happening in our schools, especially with regard to deeper learning. It's hard to say that it's happening or not happening if you're not actually looking at data at your site.
Right. Just really quickly before we take our break in a couple of minutes, for those people who are not very familiar with empathy interviews and who might want to start using them in their own context, could you explain just a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We call it an empathy interview because we really want it to be centered around that person, their experiences. But you could just think of it as an interview where you engage in deep listening. So we might ask questions that are a little more broad to allow for the person that we're interviewing to talk and be heard and and feel listened to and valued. So you might ask some follow-up questions, but it might be like, oh, can you say more about, I kind of how Mel is sort of interviewing us. It's very indicative of what an empathy interview would be like. Oh, wow, this is what you said. That's very interesting. Can you say more about that? So that happens a lot in an empathy interview, because what you're really trying to uncover is that person's experience, how they feel, how they think, and how they exist in a certain space.
Wow. Carly, I'm imagining that you've used empathy interviews or you've been a part of them. So once you've gathered then all of that data that Francis is talking about, it's not as simple as, the multiple choice kind of test. So what does that look like to go through that data and sift through it and really get a good understanding of the learners that you're serving?
Yeah, part of the capstone year is it starts with just sitting in the problem. And sitting in that problem involves empathy interviews, looking at quantitative data, but then truly just trying to understand it and not rush into a response. We spent the first 12 weeks truly just sitting in our problem and wondering why. And we made a fishbone diagram, which is part of improvement science, looking at some root cause analysis. And that kicks us off into then, okay, let's narrow these down into something that's within our sphere of control or our sphere of influence. Because a lot of what we could identify in our root cause analysis is bigger than what I can control as a fourth grade teacher. So there is some having to think about what is within my sphere of control and even bridging into my sphere of influence.
Yeah. I think that's really important for teachers who are listening and trying to figure out, where do I start this work, to understand that you can't do everything all at once, right? Just start small. Awesome. Well, what I'll do is I'll let you and Francis take a breath, Carly, because we've been going almost nonstop now for 30 minutes. And I'll share out some things that What School Could Be has in the works for all of you who are joining us today. So on Tuesday, May 13th, we're going to be hosting an ION student protagonism event with the youth design interns of Global Nomads Content Creation Lab. So the Content Creation Lab is a unique virtual internship in which youth ages 12 to 24 design original curricula on topics ranging from climate change to mental health to AI. And you can register to attend for free at whatschoolcouldbe.org/events. In the meantime, if you don't want to wait, we do have a new What School Could Be podcast episode that dropped last week. Host Josh Wapoon was able to sit down with Emine Naz Khan. Emine is a university student born and raised in Turkey who's not simply studying industrial engineering. She's actively engineering the future of education as one of the first students in a phenomenon called Nobel Navigators. And you can listen to that episode anywhere that you get your podcasts. And finally, we invite you to join our free global online community of educators. It's a space just to connect, to exchange ideas, to discover powerful stories, and explore resources that really support meaningful change. You can sign up for that at community.whatschoolcouldbe.org. Okay, so we're back, and I'm thinking that deeper learning really needs to start spreading out into the world past our little classrooms and even school districts. So I would hope that it shapes how we lead, right, and how we're starting to design systems. So I'm wondering, Francis, where are you starting to see the ripple effects of deeper learning approach, especially where there might be strong community or relationship building in place?
Yeah, it's a great segue into our deeper learning conference, which we have every spring. No, no, honestly though, I have seen in Colorado, there's some great work being done in some of the rural communities with embedding deeper learning into education and farming. And I've seen the Hopewell, that's in Hopewell, Virginia, a group in Hopewell, Virginia, really working on, as a district, how to imbue deeper learning practices amongst their teachers. And they're sort of just now transitioning, I think, into looking at the impact, the data analysis impact of that. The big picture learning community is a great one to be a part of, that centers deeper learning and equity in their work. And the big picture schools, I don't know the exact link, but I think if you Google big picture learning, you'll see they have a sort of list of schools that are all over the US, which is pretty phenomenal. That was your question, right, Mel? Just sort of where have I seen? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's
Nice
amazing.
pockets. Of work being done.
It helps to know that this kind of work is being done all over, because it can feel isolating, right? So to know that there are other people out there, that's great. And you did mention Deeper Learning Conference. Do you have any information that we can share for that? Because we just went to the one in San Diego, but I know that there are other offshoots, right, in different places.
Oh my gosh, yes. I wish I would have gotten the links. Why didn't I think of that? We have oh no. We have Deeper Learning in Colombia, which is happening next week, the 23rd of May. We have Deeper Learning China. It is, thinking about deep learning in the United States is great, but there's also a global community who are like really trying to just transform education everywhere. So definitely in China, definitely in Colombia. Those are the biggest pockets that I've seen. And then we have Deeper Learning that happens in San Diego, California every year in the spring, end of March, early April. And it is, to me, it's a conference, but it's a party. Okay. We have fun. We dance, we laugh, we commune with one another. Like I said, relationship building is really big at High Tech High. We prioritize students at the center. So all of the workshops are about, you have to have some sort of student data, student component, or some people bring students with them to help them with the conference, with their workshops or their deep dives. It's an amazing place to go if you are feeling isolated in your deeper learning journey. But we also go to big picture conferences. We go to South by Southwest. So the deeper learning community, we're all over. But if you are feeling isolated, I'm sure Mel's going to share our information, but we definitely can connect you.
Awesome. Thanks, Francis.
Yeah.
Carly, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more because you're obviously designing with your classroom in mind. And I'm sure your experience at HTH GSE has really added some new layers to the work that you're doing. So based on what you're exploring this year, the capstone, how would you describe, like take us into your classroom, how would you describe the kind of space that you're setting up, both physical, relational, maybe, and how does that support deeper learning for your students?
Yeah, I'll start with the relational. I have been very intentional this year to do it's called a strategy called 2x10s with all my students. And in my team, we are piloting a project-based learning model for the district. And so we actually see all 97 of our fourth grade students. And within that, we have our own home base. So I was very intentional to use a 2x10 with all of my home-based students. And that has grown our trust exponentially. I really, really feel that I can trust them and they can trust me. And I can see the difference between my home-based students, where I was more intentional to do those, and the students that I haven't had a chance to do a 2x10 with yet. And so have trust to gather feedback from them. So it was related to being able to gather feedback for engagement.
Mhm.
And because there's that trust, we are starting to now have the students, how do you want the room to look for this? Here's what we want to accomplish in today's lesson or today's objective or today's design. What do you think our structure in here needs to be? Do we need to separate our tables? Do we need to push 3 of them together? Like, there's much more student input, student voice, even in something like a room design, which is on the surface level, looks like it's just where do they want to work, but it is teaching students a entry point into how do I use my voice? How do I advocate for what I believe or what I think? And so it's deeper than just where should this table go?
I love that. So it matters very much, but it is something simple that any teacher can do in their classroom to elevate students' voices.
Yep.
Thanks, Carly. Well, I'm really excited to welcome our color commentator for this episode. Frances, you talked about like deeper learning being a party, and I'm so glad that I got to travel with her to San Diego for this party. Someone I truly, truly admire, and I'm just so lucky to work alongside. It's our global brand architect, Ashley Dos Santos. So Ash has been listening in very closely. She has this incredible way of surfacing what really matters in conversation. So Ash, welcome. I'm going to toss it over to you so you can explore some of those things that I know you've been thinking about.
Thanks, Mel and Carly and Frances. Thanks for your storytelling. I always am. I've been taking notes. Lots of gems you guys have been dropping on us. So thank you. So I went through a graduate school program while I was a practicing teacher as well. That was like 10 years ago now. And so it was also a very progressive program. And I feel like when I went through the program, it was a utopia. I was in this, like, just being bathed in a community that was, figuring out better ways to do things and centering student voices and taking time to get to know each other. And then I lost those people because I graduated and I went into a classroom, and I went into a very traditional public school classroom where I didn't have a community of peers that even understood the language I was speaking. It was really isolating. And so for me, that was a big challenge. So I'm wondering how you address that in your program. Is there anything you do? Like I always regret, like, they didn't tell me it was going to be this hard. We were all kumbayaing. And so for students that, are teachers that are feeling isolated, they want to learn more, figure out how to do this. They go to a program like yours, and then they're just like released into the wilds. Any advice or anything you specifically do in your program to help create that bridge?
Yeah, you know, I myself, so I'm an alum. I am an alumna from my program, so I felt that as well. And once I graduated, and I was like, "Whoa, wait, what do I do?" So I will say, going to the party that is deeper learning, or being intentional about connecting with folks outside of your school is important. We're always going to be busy. That's who we are. We're in a service industry. We are helping other people all the time. People always have needs. We're always going to be busy. So it's really, really important to make sure that you're making time to invest in yourself and your growth beyond the sort of maybe more formal program. We try our best to engage our alumni. I mean, we are emailing, texting. We're at Deeper Learning. We have like an alumni mixer, because we want to create authentic ways for our alumni to still connect with one another. We also hire our alumni back to be improvement coaches and to be instructors for our program, so that they can still stay connected with the community, as much as possible. And then we invite them back for anytime we have something, we're inviting our alumni to Deeper Learning. We have like PBL in action with the graduate school. We have improvement science workshops. We are inviting them to everything, because we just like to remind them, hey, we're still here. We're here for you. And you have family always, because it does feel really isolating.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of programming post, graduation. They can still opportunities to still engage. So I don't think I had that. So hopefully that is a way. Just check-ins, right? To remember, like we're still out there. We're in the wild, but we're in it together.
We're here, cuckoo.
Can I add on to that too?
Please.
One thing we've done throughout this program is presentations of learning. And in those presentations of learning, we're encouraged to invite the people we work with. And so there is an intermixing of our cohort and the people we work with. And so this mindset is being spread to the people I work with, not just through me, but they'll reference, like, remember that presentation of learning and what your one classmate said? So it's almost like my cohort, my people, the people who are going to be some of my best friends are like living on through my coworkers too, and vice versa. So that's been a really unique aspect for me as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. That was another question I had of, hearing you, Carly, talk about this transformative experience you're having. And I would imagine you're going, it's not easy, right? It's hard for teachers just to go to PD on their campus, let alone attend a graduate program where there are like high demands, right? Like for most teachers, they're so drained, like all the emotional weight of their learners in the classroom, and then doing more. So this transformative experience you're having, how does that feel when, a lot of your colleagues aren't going through the same thing? So it sounds like the program is helping you build that in, like including them somewhat. But do you have any examples of experiences with your colleagues where you've been like I know, like this, I'm going to get them, or just like, it's not going to happen. I just need to be patient. They're there. I'm here, and patience and waiting. And you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. One of our earliest classes in the first year, the first 10 months, is designing for deeper learning. And in that, we design a project. And I invited my teammates to that presentation of learning. And we did that project last year. And that is what kickstarted us to then move into a PBL model for this year. And our work this year is starting to be scaled out to others in our district. And when you trace it back, it comes back to that designing for deeper learning class.
That reminds me, Carly, something you shared with me when I saw you at the Deeper Learning party in San Diego. We were actually sitting together. It was my first experience with the graduate school program. It was an alumni mixer, and like walked in, and there's like streamers and music super loud, and people are like, it's like a food fight happening. There was so much love and joy, like as an outsider experiencing it. But then, Carly, we sat down, and you told me about kind of like you are mobilizing your community, right? Like you're having a direct impact on not just your school, but it's, one person, two people, three people. So could you just share that journey and how like one little small step that you made is turning into something larger, and like how many people it's impacted so people can hear it? Because it inspired me.
Yeah. Building off of the story I just shared with, we're doing this PBL model in 4th grade at my school. Now interdisciplinary projects, furthering project-based learning in my district, and we're not a project-based learning district, is happening. This summer, they've asked me to facilitate a course for their K-12 teachers about interdisciplinary projects and project-based learning. And I'm going to draw a lot on this program for that. But even when you narrow it down to maybe like the engagement work I've been doing, I've worked with some of my school leaders to scale that out to the other grades in the building. And I just found out that it was also scaled to our other elementary schools. And so I think part of that too is like my school leaders trust me and I trust them too. Like there's definitely that relational trust. That's such a big part of deeper learning.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So kind of to change it up a little, question I have, I know I taught for 5 years before I went back and got my graduate degree in educational leadership. And that was a hard decision to make. And I like researched so many schools and like, do I go into huge debt and do this program? Do I want to keep teaching, so it has to be in the evenings, or go to like a local school, but then I got to take the GRE, and like there's so many different things to consider for a practicing teacher when they choose a graduate school. And so what did that journey, like what pushed you, Carly, to make the jump and choose this path?
I have a lot of connections with you. I was 10 years into my education career, and I was looking at programs, and I could do it for this or this, and I didn't really have a passion. I didn't find that passion in any of the programs. I knew I was passionate about equity. I knew I was passionate about deeper learning, project-based learning. And then I heard about the High-Tech High program. And I will always remember what my dad said to me when I was looking at undergrads, and it applied here. He said, do you want a degree or do you want an education? And I knew I wanted that education. I wasn't doing it for just the degree. I wasn't doing it to climb a ladder. Like I truly wanted to learn in my program. And when I read the course descriptions and everything about this program, I was like, this is how I grow. This is how I become a better educator.
Francis, do you have anything to add? I know you probably work with a lot of different, candidates, and why they come to your program.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think people come, they see the Most Likely to Succeed documentary, they see project-based learning, and they think, oh, wow, this must be like a cool place to learn. And I think once you get here, you are constantly surprised at how cool of a place it is to learn. And this is not me. This was like this before I took over the program. So this is not anything that I do in particular, but it is the environment, I believe, that is High-Tech High. It's a learning space, like we said earlier, that really values you as a human being first. And until you've been there, until you've been in a space like that, I don't think I could even describe how beautiful and wonderful it is to constantly feel seen and heard and validated. So to me, you know, project-based learning might bring folks here. Most of our students come from word of mouth, like 68% are sort of referred to us by someone else. And so usually it's a trusted friend and they're like, no, this program is great. And I think it's so much word of mouth because of what happens once you're there. You're like, you are pleasantly surprised. We have, for example, we have a school law class. I used to teach it, but like I said, it's not me. It's like the environment. And the students every year, they're like, I don't want to take school law. What? I'm going to read cases? Like, what is this about? But like, no, y'all. This is school law, the high-tech highway. Okay. Carly could tell you, I'm assuming you had a really good experience because it's not just, we don't just read cases, you know, we look at cases, yes, but we look at what's the family's point of view? What is the law's point of view? What is the school leader's point of view? What do you do when you have to comply with a law that you disagree with? So these are the sorts of experiences that we're constantly having and engaging in our program. And I think people hear about it and want to be a part of it because it really is transformative.
I have one more thing I'd like to ask. And that is if you could paint, you know, if you could snap your fingers and like have the school of your dreams to work at and be part of, public school, you know, close your eyes and you see it, right? Like, where are people? What does it look like? What are you hearing? What's going on? What are the questions? What would that look like? Can you guys each, I want to hear what your dream school, there were no limits, what it would look like. Ooh, a lot of pressure. Sorry.
Carly, you want to go first?
Yeah, the first thing I thought of is it's not quiet. Learning is loud and learning is messy. And that doesn't mean chaos, but it means kids are around. It's a school. There's learning taking place. We should hear it. We should see it. So that's the first thing I'm thinking is like, I want to see that students are present and I want to hear that students are present too.
For me, the first thing I go when I visit a school, the first thing I look for to see if people are smiling. So, you know, I think there's something to say about wanting to go to the same place every day, and sort of seeing that and observing that. And then also, I'm like this. I don't really like bounds. I don't really like boundaries. So I like to see people spread out. You know, we're using the space, we're outside, we're here, but learning is happening because it's not centered around one adult. Learning is like it's curated in a space where the learning can happen all over because that's how our world works. We're constantly sharing information with other people and talking to this person and thinking about how what they said to us applies to our lives. We're doing that right now. It's happening right now in the chat. So I feel like in my ideal school, there would be structure, but no boundaries. So I think they're having freedom to learn and to learn in any space and with anyone would be my ideal scenario. I've actually seen it when I first got to High Tech High. I was shocked at how kids were learning and building things and using tools. And I was like, what is happening? What is this place? Who does this? And yeah, you know, no bells, because I just had grown up in this. I'm thinking in this very traditional way, like if there's no bells, how would the students know when to get to class? Shockingly, they still get to class without the bells. You know, so I think a place where we're constantly sort of rethinking and building structures to support the students that we have, not like this is how it's always been done, but okay, we adjust for the people that we have this year.
So I imagine just like a playground, right? It's loud, it's messy. People are going to the swings to learn about, building. They're going down the slide. They're, getting snacks to learn how to cook, and, so sign me up.
Yeah.
Right. And there's models that, like you said, Francis, there's models of this happening. I'm right now in Wyoming to see a model happening. We're like, Wyoming, what's happening there? But there's like corners all over the country. And so that's why I'm so grateful to be with What School Could Be in here, is because we get to spotlight these models like High Tech High. Like, this is happening here. Look, you can do it too. Right. So keep anyone in this space listening and watching, and Carly and Francis as well. Please keep sharing your stories. Don't be humble, right? Be proud. Don't be shy about what you're doing. We need to be like on soapboxes screaming about how great we are, and the wonderful messes we're creating in our learning spaces. So thank you for inviting me to be with y'all here. Mel, I'll
hand it back. Well, before we close out, I just want to kind of go back to this idea that's been surfacing over and over again about being seen and heard and validated. And it is, in case people haven't recognized this, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So a happy week to all of those hardworking educators out there. And maybe the last thing I will ask is, do you, Francis or Carly, have a teacher, either your own teacher or a teacher colleague that you work with, that you want to shout out today before we head off?
Yes, I do. Shout out to Geneva Clark. You're the best.
Geneva.
Yeah, I'm going to shout out Sarah Swan McDonald, my high school social studies teacher. Just the first person, I think, who saw me.
Oh, amazing. Ash, you have anyone at the top of your head?
It's always, yes, Mr. Waters. We called him Señor Aguas, and he was my Spanish teacher in high school. And he would just like stop class and teach lessons on like character and being a good person. And he'd be like, we'll do Spanish tomorrow. Like, today, we need to be good people. We need to listen to each other. And so having him just like drop the curriculum and like be a human in front of us was always super inspiring. So Mr. Waters, RIP, he's not with us anymore, but yeah, that would be the man.
And I will shout out my high school English teacher, Mr. Slagle, who was the founder of the Tree Huggers Club at my old high school. And we just loved him so much. So, wow. Okay. With all of that, Carly, Francis, thank you so much for sharing your stories here and your experiences, and really sharing how that you're putting learning into action and championing deeper learning in your own spaces. Ash, thank you for jumping in, even though you just got off a flight a couple hours ago, and helping us listen and learn more deeply from Carly and Francis. And to all of you who joined us live or who are watching the recording, thank you for being a part of this community. The conversations are richer because you're here with us, thinking deeply, and asking those hard questions so that we can push this work forward. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your afternoon, day, evening, wherever you're at.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.